This is episode 219 of the VoiceBot podcast. My guest today is Natalie Monbio, head of strategy at Hour One. We discuss virtual humans, text-to-speech, and automated video creation to drive higher engagement at scale. Hello, VoiceBot Nation. This is your host, Brett Kinsella. I'm here each week to break down the trends and highlight the people and the innovations shaping the future of voice, AI, and related technologies. Today, I have part 5 in our ongoing series on virtual humans. Today, we take a look at a different model for virtual humans, which focuses on scalable video production. There's no chatbot or conversational assistant, as the script is preset before publishing. However, there is a lot of AI involved, including text-to-speech and, of course, visual rendering of the avatar. And as an added bonus, our guest today, Natalie, spent many years prior to her role at Hour One as an agency executive. Towards the end of the interview, we asked her to break down how consumer brand marketers should prioritize efforts related to virtual humans and some of these other related technologies in their marketing mix. So very valuable feedback from her, given a long tenure in the industry helping marketers. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to join the VoiceBot community Discord servers. It is a community resource provided by VoiceBot. You can connect with industry colleagues there, post about your product launches, your newsletters. You can even talk about your upcoming events to drive awareness. You can also participate in topical conversations and get access to data and events that we host in the server. Think of it as a cross between Slack, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Clubhouse, all people in our industry sharing information and having a good time very often. It's pretty simple to join. You have hundreds of industry colleagues already there. Just go to voicebot.ai/discord, voicebot.ai/discord. I hope to see you there. Please tag me in a post when you do arrive so that I can say hello. Okay, now to this week's guest. Natalie Monbio is head of strategy and business development for Hour One. She's working with companies there across a number of industries as varied as real estate, e-learning, automotive, consumer brands. That's just to name a few. And we talk about all of these types of use cases and industry verticals today. And she's also shaping Hour One's go-to-market and growth strategies. So there's a lot to share there. Prior to Hour One, Monbio was an SVP at Publicis, where she worked on new technologies and the Samsung account notably. She was an SVP at Worldwide. Before that, focused on digital and strategic innovation. And earlier in her career, worked at IPG Media Lab and even did an earlier tour of duty in media planning for Fortune 500 clients. Monbio earned a master's degree from Oxford. Next up, virtual humans of a different kind, scalable video production, speech synthesis, and how companies are taking advantage of these emerging technologies. Let's get started. Natalie Monbio, welcome to the VoiceBot podcast.
Thank you, Brett. Thrilled to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you here as well. So we're talking virtual humans, but with a twist today. And so I think this is going to be very educational for a lot of the folks who are listening. As you know, this community oftentimes is really focused on the AI aspects, and particularly the conversational aspects. But all of this area is important to the folks who listen to the VoiceBot podcast. So you have a different type of story to tell, and I'm really excited to delve into that. So why don't we start with a little bit about you and what you're doing, and maybe give people a high-level overview of what Hour One is.
Sure thing. So I'm Natalie Monbio, and I am the head of business and strategy at Hour One. I joined the company at the start of 2019, just as it was being founded. And just as I was leaving the agency world, where I had spent almost all of my career in various cities around, from London to San Francisco to LA and New York, had a field day being kind of a disruptor within the agency world and always, trying to find new ways to solve existing problems, more often than not through various emerging solutions in the fields of AI and other emerging technologies. And I really cut my teeth that way and developed kind of a way of thinking that was kind of, well, what if we could answer this differently with what's newly available to us? So I really, really enjoy that kind of territory. And so it was amazing when I left the agency world to kind of just discover what else was out there. I stumbled across Hour One, kind of on a phone call, kind of weirdly, and thought, wow, this is a company that is sort of doing exactly the kind of thing that really excites me at a stage that is super early, yet the technology exists. So it was just the right time for me to come on board to help kind of define product market fit and to strategize as to the kinds of use cases this technology could best be deployed for. And so a little bit about what Hour One does. So Hour One is an AI company, but the problem that Hour One is solving is the very difficult and quite painful studio capture process when it comes to video. So we're really a video company, and we're using AI to solve the friction points that exist when you're creating video in studio quality featuring real human people. So we use AI in order to replace the need to be in a studio in order to create endless amounts of content, or any content at all, to be frank. And because we're using AI, we don't just overcome kind of the basic frictions of cost and kind of everybody having to be synchronously on location in order to create content. And we're talking about talent, crew, studio availability, all of these things. So we've solved the friction by being able to generate that content using AI. But we've also been able to augment what's possible in video through AI. And there are some pretty exciting things that we're able to do, which I can obviously certainly get into. But the best way to think of us is we are an AI-driven video production platform, and we create video end to end just on a single platform. And anyone with no skills at all, as long as you've got some content but in the form of text, you can make infinite numbers of videos in a really high quality for your business. So we do serve businesses, which is something that's quite unique about us in the digital human space. We don't serve kind of a consumer or kind of social media audience. We're really here to help businesses transform by creating a better digital communications experience for them, especially as we, this has been a trajectory for a very long time, but precipitated through the pandemic, where businesses, if they weren't already online, had to be and had to find a better way to do that and to communicate in a way that is more human and more authentic, but leveraging digital to its full extent.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I had come across Hour One a little over a year ago, but was reintroduced to it when you did the project with Taryn Southern. And so maybe you could explain to people what that was and how that manifested itself, and just give some background for the folks listening. Taryn Southern is a YouTube personality, if you haven't come across her in the past. She's celebrity-ish, sort of like a new media celebrity, I think is probably the best way to think about it. Maybe you have another term for it. But she created this, I think she calls it a digital twin or digital clone using Hour One technology, and then did a number of projects around it. So maybe you could just explain to, like, what was that project like? What did she do? Like, how long was she in the studio? What was the output? And how do you think that is an example of how people will use the technology going forward?
Mm-hmm. So super exciting starting to work with Taryn. We actually started talking to her well before the pandemic. And then we got to pick up actually during the pandemic because our technology is actually fairly well given to situations where you can't all be together kind of on set creating video. But the real premise behind it was that, as you say, Taryn is one of the original YouTube stars, but she's also a futurist, and she sees herself as kind of a mouthpiece for actually experimenting with new technologies and then just sharing it with the world in an engaging and kind of digestible way. And she was really fascinated with our technology because of an actual true insight about herself, which is that she actually prefers to be more behind the scenes and producing content versus kind of being the interface for content. And she wanted to explore whether having an avatar of herself, she calls it an AI clone, if that could actually genuinely help her with her ambitions to produce more content and spend more time researching and meeting companies and understanding technologies and being on the ground and kind of like, using her kind of creative and intellectual faculties and focusing more on that than kind of spending a lot of time in front of the camera. So that was her rationale for wanting to do this. And then just a general kind of fascination with the technology. And this is kind of like her subject area as well. So there were a lot of reasons that it made sense from her perspective. From our perspective, it was just fantastic to be able to collaborate openly with someone who really understood what it was that we were trying to do at a very early stages of our company. And then also it was a sort of a proof point for what we do, which is, even though we have digital humans, it's one way of, kind of describing what our synthetic characters are, which is another descriptor. This is a very nascent industry. And I know this is why you're doing this series and you do what you do, trying to help people understand, like, the nomenclature in this industry is still in its infancy. So I think we're all kind of defining as we go, like, what makes most sense. But all of our characters, I'm just going to use that term going forward, all of our characters are actually based on real human beings. So we essentially digitize real human beings. So doing this with Taryn was also
like the opposite of metahuman.
In a way, like, our starting point is very much human. We're not making humans up. We're starting with a real human being, and then we're digitizing them in order to be able to create endless amounts of content featuring that person with their permission. In the case of Taryn, so I can describe what we did. So the process was, we got her in a studio, and she had a couple of different looks because she wanted her, as she calls it, AI clone, to, have some flexibility, a couple of different sort of ways of sort of different looks for presenting different types of content. And so we got her in a studio with a green screen situation, and we had our production team in Tel Aviv, video conference in and direct the shoot. And the goal of that is to capture about 3 to 5 minutes worth of quality footage. And with that footage, which essentially becomes the data that we can then use to create her digital character. So that's what we did. And so then, so following the shoot, actually, if you go to Taryn's YouTube page, you can see so the proof of concept video on there, and also the making of video of how, what the process was like actually creating her character. So it's a really simple process. There we just use a normal video camera, normal studio. Everything's quite normal. We have, a few sort of things like lighting in the hair. We have try and minimize reflections and just little things like that. And what we do is we have like a methodology that we guide the person through, such as, talk very still, talk with a little bit more character and expression, and, various degrees of expressiveness, essentially, so that we can capture their full range of facial expressions, so that we have this data essentially at our disposal when we want to generate new content.
Right. Okay, so this process starts out probably ahead of time. You plan on what you're going to do. Then you go into the studio, do a professional studio shoot. You need 3 to 5 minutes, I guess, of each format. I guess if she had some different looks that she wanted to do, you get 3 to 5 minutes. You do the different expressions. You have all this data. A couple quick questions. So I've noticed in this space, some are shoulders, neck up, some are full body, some are sort of mid body. Do you do all of the above, or are you just focused on the shoulders and above?
So most of our content today is shoulders and above. And what we're really focused on as well is presenter-led content. I should have said that earlier. So it is talking to the camera. It's kind of talking head type content. So this is the use case that we are serving. That said, we have started to, and I should also say that like everything in the frame is generated. Okay, so we're using a lot of compute power to generate, what you can see. And so when you add more body parts, right, which we can do and have done for a couple of clients, we can do up to about the mid body. But the question is that really worth it? It takes longer. It costs a little bit more. If you need it, and some clients do, because that's just the aspect ratio of their experience that they want to expand on, then we can do that. But things like full body, hands, and things like that, those are a little bit further out. And they're a bit, further out in our roadmap because we've got lots of other priorities that we're kind of focused on, which I can obviously tell you about in a bit.
Yeah, you should drop a lot of news while we're talking about it. Your latest fundraising, all the things that people want to know. But so generally presenter-led, shoulders and above, so people get a perspective of this. You take all this, you capture all this video content, you're able to build a model, and then you can render that model based on this. Now, is one of the things you do when you're doing the video shoot is, do you have the subject speak? Do they talk so that you can actually start to figure out how they formulate different words with their mouth?
Yeah, so actually we definitely have them talk. And when I say, we have them sort of be expressive, demonstrate different levels of expressiveness, that's definitely talking. But they can be talking, they're just gobbledygook. I don't know if that translates into American English, but just they could be saying anything. It doesn't matter. Okay, good. It doesn't matter what they're saying as long as their mouth is moving, so that we can capture how they say words in different levels of expressiveness.
Okay. So you don't have like a particular script or certain types of words or expressions or vowels that you want them to say. It's just as long as you get movement of some sort of vocalized expression, then you can build the model based on that.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay. So you take all these shots, you're able to build a model. Now, is this model only head on? Can you do 22.5 degrees, 45 degrees, profile, 360? What is it?
Yeah, we can do slightly off to the side, slight angle, but really what we're focused on is speaking to the camera. And there are endless numbers of use cases that fit that. And we're trying to be, quite specific in
Sure.
the services that we offer and stuff. So like I would say, for all intents and purposes, just think facing the camera.
Okay, right. All right. So this is all really good, useful information. So you build the model. So Taryn or whoever your client is leaves the studio. You have the data you need to build the model. What happens next?
Okay, so I should also sort of at this point tell you a little bit more about our characters. So we did something unique with Taryn, and we do unique things with specific people, whether they are other celebrities or if they are chief executives or known people within companies that want to digitize themselves so that they can create endless amounts of content without them having to actually spend their valuable time sitting in front of a camera. So that is one area of service that we offer. And actually, we're also working with some very small businesses like solopreneurs who, again, they need to scale themselves. It's just them. So and a lot of them are like generating content, learning courses, how-tos, all of these materials. So we are very useful to them because we basically enable all of this for them, all the production, like from beginning to end. All they provide us is, first of all, their likeness, like a few minutes of video footage, and then they provide us with the text, and then they might approve video templates, which is something else that we provide to create finished videos. So they can completely outsource the content, like from beginning to end, other than coming up with the script itself, which only they would know how to do because it's their expertise that we're helping to communicate in a more effective way digitally for them. So that's one kind of camp of things, of our offering. But our main offering is actually, we have 100 characters and counting just available on our platform. So you can go into our platform and just pick one of these ready-made characters. And we strive to be very representative in the characters that we have. And that's actually something that customers find very appealing, is the fact that they can actually choose from a diversity of different characters to fit their various sort of customer bases and niches that they might have, in the US or in other markets as well. And that's the easiest way to kind of get started. You pick an off-the-shelf character, you submit the text in the platform, you hit a button, and you can just generate that character speaking the text that you've entered in the language that you've entered the text in. So that's another thing. Another aspect of it is like the flexibility of that.
Yeah, just to clarify there, in that instance, then you're not going to the studio. You're just picking something that's already there. And so it's like basically picking character off the shelf.
Exactly. So you're like logging in to a piece of software onto a website, basically, and you are selecting a character, you're selecting a language, you're inputting the text, you're hitting a button, and then you get your character. That's a simplest way to make a video.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So will you have these off the shelf characters? Will you create a custom character, or do they have to bring someone in to be their model for that character? How do you do that?
Yeah. So we do, many businesses maybe don't necessarily have someone in particular they want to capture, but they want someone that is unique to them. So something we can do is you can create exclusivity with one of the characters that we already have on board, or we can do a custom casting, which is something that we often do as well.
So every one of your existing characters is a specific person in the world.
Yeah.
That is essentially licensed their likeness to you for this use.
That's exactly it. And so I can talk a bit about that. So they engage with us in a contract. So they allow us to use their likeness to create their digital character and to make their character available to businesses within certain fields, and we're very defined about the types of businesses that they would ever be associated with. And then they also get paid when their likeness is used in videos. So, and that's something that we handle on behalf of customers as well. It's like they own the copyright. We pass on the copyright for that video. So they own the video, but the talent behind the character doesn't relinquish that. So, but the video itself is something that gets produced and passed on, and the client owns it.
Got it. And so there's some sort of royalty stream that goes to the character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So today I would say it's like, we've added something here in terms of it's like the gig economy, like a kind of an unforeseen new job that people can have, which is licensing their likeness, appearing in commercials in a way that was not possible before. So it's kind of wild.
Right. So this is relatively new in the video space. It's been around for a little bit longer in the audio space. And so people have, obviously you have voiceover actors, but you also have people who have contributed their voices to be a synthetic voice. Very famously, Alexa is, Brad Stone tracked down the woman who was the Alexa, the source of the Alexa sound. So tell me how you handle voice synthesis.
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. So actually, we tend not to handle voice synthesis, but our platform is open. So we basically can integrate different voice providers into our platform. So that it's, as you say, it's already quite a mature field. And there are many voice providers providing all kinds of voices in all kinds of languages. And so what we've built is the capability to integrate those voices into our platform and to sync with our characters. And we actually make it available that you can have text to speech, or we can also source through a partner. We can also source real voices. So depending on, we have kind of varying levels of sort of different solutions, different levels of realism, depending on what the ultimate outcome needs to be.
Okay. I want to follow up on that, but let me just go back to the speech synthesis before we do that. Mm-hmm. So you provide the video solution, and it's bring your own voice or your own synthetic voice. So people would then, your clients, like Taryn, for example, she would have contracted out with someone else to create a synthetic voice, which is her likeness, which then would integrate with your solution.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways of going about it. You can bring your own voice, your real voice, in terms of voice files, or you could have your voice synthesized, depending on kind of like how deep you want to get into this and, you know, what kind of investment you want to make into your total character. But the most common way is just to pick within our platform. We've got it integrated. You pick a character, and then the next stage is there's a drop down, and you can pick from a number of different voices in a number of different languages. So it's a very seamless kind of two-step experience where you pick your character, you pick your voice. It's just that we're not generating the voice. The voice is pre-exists from other providers.
So if it's one of your primary business, which is these pre-built characters, and then you could actually put different voices to align those with their characters. So that's another avenue of customization. But if it's the CEO or the celebrity or the solopreneur who they need their own likeness, they're going to need to build their own synthetic voice, and then you just take that text-to-speech engine and integrate it in.
It's quite interesting. Again, it sort of depends on what it is they're trying to do. So like many chief execs will want to be able to communicate with their customer base across the globe, let's say in languages they don't speak.
I see.
So synthesizing their voice wouldn't actually help in that respect. So what we can do is, and again, it depends on what level of realism they want, because I mean, you know probably better than anybody, like the levels of quality in text-to-speech, which are actually very good these days, but there are limitations. So it's still not quite real. So if you want to go real, you can use real voice overs, which we enable as well as bringing your own recordings or sourcing voice actors specifically as well. So there's a few different ways to go about it, depending again on what you're trying to do.
So this is good. So this is the type of stuff that people listening are going to want to know. So you have TTS models already for voices. Have you built those yourselves, or do you use a third party for that?
So our tech team will probably be best place to kind of talk about the actual sort of process of integrations, but we just make them available within our platform. And so let's say,
is this going to be like, Amazon Poly, which people would all recognize those as voices?
Yeah, that's one. So that would be one, and there's a number. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's also been by request as we've been building out our self-serve solution. Is some companies have already been working with Amazon Poly or another voice provider. And so, it's also, we're bringing on more and more based on demand, but there isn't really any limitation as to what we couldn't bring on.
Okay, great. So then the next point here, not to be pedantic, but just want to make sure I understand how this all works. Let's say instead of typing it all in and using a TTS, I wanted to just pre-record and send you a recording. Can you integrate the recording in and then do the lip syncing and all that?
Yep, we're doing that with an e-learning company at the moment. So they already have created high quality voice recordings, and they want to upgrade that experience from voice only and narration only of their content to have it be presenter led, which is obviously what we specialize in. So we're taking their voice files and we're putting a character, we're matching them with a character. So now they've got what they know is a more engaging and sticky e-learning experience that results in more students, consuming the content and to fruition.
Okay, this is great. All right, so we've got a couple different options here. We've got actually several, but let's say we've got these two main lines where they pick from your catalog, or they do a studio shoot so they can do their own likeness, and then they have this capability from you. So they're one of your customers, and they want to use the system. So this is just a matter of them either uploading audio content or typing in new content in order to enable the solution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as simple as that.
All right. So anytime they want to do something new, they can just create sort of a new module or file, and then they just create some linking to it. Now, where is this deployed? So is this on the web? Is it in mobile apps?
Yeah.
What do you support on that front?
So we built our own video player.
Okay.
And so one way to deploy the videos is to just basically integrate the player into your digital environment. And that's nice and easy, because also if you wanted to make changes to your video, you could go into the platform and you could just make updates to the text, and then your video would automatically be updated. You don't need to be kind of dealing with uploads and downloads and all of this kind of stuff. That said, using our player doesn't fit all solutions. We do offer kind of a full suite of post-production within the platform, but nevertheless, if you're a very sophisticated e-learning company that's already invested a lot in kind of how you generate the background content, then you might want to use our characters with an alpha channel, download them and integrate them into your content. So depending again on kind of what it is the end result needs to be, there's some flexibility there.
Oh, I see. So it doesn't have to be fully produced within your platform. They could actually just take the output of that and integrate it into some other production that they have.
We do allow that too, yes.
Okay, got it. All right, this is very interesting. All right, so just one other quick technical question. If I update the text, or I update or add a new upload of a recording, then there's some processing that needs to take place, I presume.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how long does that take? Like if I create a new thing, or if I upload a 4-minute speech that I want to use with my digital clone, how long does the processing take before it's going to be available?
Yeah, so it's a matter of minutes. If you're doing the text-to-speech method, it's a matter of minutes, and it depends on how much content that you're generating at a time. But that we had, some breakthroughs relatively recently in terms of speed, which is one of our KPIs, and that will continue to shrink. So for a shorter piece of content, it's under a minute already, and for longer pieces, the time will reduce to a matter of, well, in all cases, to a matter of seconds in time, and then will increasingly become almost instant.
Okay, so this could be used for breaking news, rapid response, all these other types of things, because you just have to type it in. I think it's also interesting that if you're going to do something which might be a couple of minutes of runtime in the video, it is probably or might be faster to type it. But if you're going to do something 5, 10, 15 minutes, it's very likely faster to record it, just because that's a lot of typing, a lot of composition you have to think about. Have you had customers that have thought about best practices in terms of when they just record it versus when they use text, or are they pretty much always text or always recording? So
the input tends to be text, and I'll just talk about kind of like some of our more common use cases. So I've touched on a bit of e-learning. We can definitely talk more about that. And but just another sort of very large vertical that we serve is e-commerce. And in e-commerce, think about a video for every product, like a presenter-led video for every product that you sell. And so we do quite a bit in real estate, and we do quite a bit in automotive. So just in the case of real estate, what you have is data. You don't have voice recordings. You don't even have finished sentences necessarily. But what you have is data points and bullet points about the property, about each property, and images as well. So what we do in that scenario is we co-develop a textual template. So some kind of intro, some kind of outro, the key data points that every video for every listing will have. So if you're going to talk about the location, the address, the location, the nicest thing about the home, some key features, things like that. It's like, okay, so we want some uniformity in terms of like what a consumer is going to want to hear and see when they're shopping for a home. So kind of like understand what those things are. And again, the real estate company or the real estate platform is going to know a lot of this stuff. So we kind of like do a little bit of collaboration at the beginning. And so we create a textual template or like a sentence structure that all the homes will follow. All the videos for the home will follow. And what the input there, actually, once you've created that template, are the data points. So in this case, in the case of kind of many e-commerce use cases, which kind of follow a similar pattern, what we're looking for in terms of the input is data. So the data, in this case, the data about each home, the things that define it and make it unique. And those are the data points that encased in a presenter-led tour of the home, integrating all of the imagery from the home. And we also add some music and just make it into this really rich and engaging experience that's much more immersive than kind of like, scrolling through a carousel of images. You kind of like, it doesn't really bring it to life. So creating these presenter-led videos with this sort of virtual broker enables you to kind of tie together everything about the home, leveraging the data that's already there. But you're kind of like making that data speak to you or speak to the consumer in a way that makes it more digestible and engaging.
Okay, so you have a particular offering for real estate, so that you have some real estate customers who are using. That's correct. Mm-hmm. That's one of your use cases.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a couple questions about that. So first, when they build these, are they more likely to select a male or female presenter?
It's really interesting. Like in the case of like customers, I feel like in the end they want both, and that's the flexibility
right.
of the platforms. Like you can have both, and it doesn't really cost you anything. So I think that's the kind of preference, is to have both eventually. It is interesting though, like so if you go onto our website and you go to the Reels page, that's what we call our self-serve platform, Reels. Somewhat ironically, but also we offer Reel. So if you go on there, you basically can submit to make a video. And you do have to choose if you want your character to be male or female. And I have observed that if you can only choose one, that it often is a female.
Yeah, that's what I would expect that, particularly for this use case. But worth asking, because this is a question that comes up from time to time, or a discussion point anyway in the industry. All right, so that's a really interesting use case, I think. Do you have any data points on how that increases engagement, or maybe number of offers they get, or the number of likes they get?
Yeah. So between real estate and also automotive, which is actually a very similar setup, because if you think about it, It's like you're shopping for a car, you want uniformed information. Exactly. So what we have seen is that KPIs, which are like some indicators of the ultimate KPI, which is sales, we do drive traction on those KPIs. So for example, on homes, the number, it might be known that number of saves of a home correlates with the number of successful visits to a home. So we have shown that our videos listings with videos result in KPI increases on the ones that lead to actual sales. So that's what I can say about the real estate industry. And then in automotive, we have actually seen that an acceleration towards purchase as a result of featuring the videos in the listings. So basically it does work when you're thinking about the fact that you're doing this with the express purpose of driving the kind of engagement that's going to generate the more high value and accurate leads, which then result in a sale.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so from a automotive standpoint, this seems pretty straightforward to me. They would deploy your video player on their website, because that's where people largely find this. Although there are some aggregation sites. Real estate is mostly aggregation sites, almost exclusively. So it's Realtor.com, it's Zillow, it's Redfin, it's a few other places. Is there a way for them to embed your player in those aggregation sites, or do they have to get that home buyer off to another website or app so that they can view the video?
No, there's a way to integrate our player into those platforms as well. I think there's also maybe a distinction on whether it's a home that platform is actually selling versus kind of like a syndication. But yeah, okay. Anyway, without going into too much, yes, there is a way to do that. There's also the option to download and upload if there's a specific player that the platform is already working with, or if they have their own.
Okay, so there are some platforms that you're working with, and if that platform is listing the home, then
yes, if they're listing the home, if they're listing the home, and they have access to the player, then
right.
Yes, then it's fairly simple.
Okay, that's really interesting. Well, let's talk about other use cases. You mentioned e-commerce. You talked about having a presenter talk about each product and the features of the products. You talked a little bit about e-learning. That makes sense. Automotive. We just talked about real estate. What else in terms of use cases are you seeing some traction on?
Yeah. So I would like to talk a bit more about e-learning because I think it's a really interesting one and it's a very broad field. But just to touch on some other ones, we have news. So you mentioned before, like news anchor. And now that we've been able to now generate content in minutes or less, that becomes a viable solution for breaking news or like, news within the hour kind of thing.
Right.
By the time you've, done the relevant post-production and you've, hosted it on your platform and all of that kind of thing. Another area would be coaching, like health coaching. There's a number of different companies out there that, that allow people to